Catus Maximus here, this time with a little review of these Dorman. I'll call they're calling these their builder series professional. They are Chinese made, but the reason I got these wire strippers was a little lost for words. They're real small, they're compact, that's the big deal. And when I was looking at the side profile, I thought, wow, the sheet steel, it is stamped sheet steel. You know, here's a pair of American KDs, and we can see that the steel is indeed pretty thick. It's actually even thicker than these KDs, but these KDs have a wider cross section. And I also thought, well, they're relatively proper. Come on now, camera. We can see that they did grind the wire sheath pulling jaws. These are just kind of act like basic pliers, and once you've made this cut on the wire, that you can grab a hold of the sheath and pull it out. And that it has a couple of the crimpers on the front end, where many are like this, where they have the strippers on the front end and the crimpers on the back end. And if you're in a tight space, obviously trying to reach around and use something like this is going to be more difficult than being able to reach in with some real compact pliers. And that's the other reason I got these, is there are, of course, front crimping pliers. I have a few of them. I couldn't find any of them for this video. I don't know why. But they tend to be really long handle. These are short handle. One thing I also found interesting is the handles are flared, but these are stamped sheet steel. So I know that the steel, they can make a wave, but I don't know if, because it's awfully hard. And it would seem weird that they do the stamped sheet metal and then actually like forge some wide handles. So I believe they're just like some kind of plastic sleeve that then they dipped to get this kind of gummy coating. But that is at least a piece of attention to detail, that it isn't just the thin handles, they are a little bit wider. The pliers seem relatively straight. That's one thing about these sheet metal pliers, and many times they'll just be all kinds of wonky. Anyway, they're real basic. They only have laser etch sizing, not stamped. Stamp's always better. It's more expensive because you have to have physical tooling to do it, but of course it stands the test of time, doesn't wear off, blah blah blah. Or something like this really isn't such a big deal, but nonetheless it will wear off, particularly because this sheet metal is already coated and they laser etch over the top of it, so after a short period of time. The other thing that I thought was interesting is that their fastener system is kind of like what pocket knives use, where they have a nested bolt. This is a bolt that's where the halves actually ride on, that's the hinge pin, but it's hollow, and then it has a little hex screw that threads into that. So we'll see how well it actually remains tight. That's the biggest concern about this. You have to put a lot of Loctite on it, because obviously as you're opening and closing it's going to tend to want to twist and loosen that up. And this is all as opposed, here's a set of Doyle's. Milwaukee has these, a lot of brands do. This is what a premium pair. This is forged in ground steel, really pretty nice. Anyway, but that was really the big deal about this. This does not have any bolt, bolt cutters. These are just because these are common size fasteners used in electrical work, electrical panels. So that's why these bigger ones come with bolt cutters. But we can see this is just a lot more compact. If we do it right at the hinge point, it'll just fit into some really tight areas, and that was the whole point of it. I'll do a little crimp on a on a paper clip here. Make sure I get that. There we go. Anyway, it is proper, and I have been learned that the toothed one is for these, well, this is a barrel, but for spade connectors that don't have this plastic sleeve on them. And the rounded one is for when you have a plastic sleeve, known as insulated and non-insulated. We'll get that in the right portion. I just want to see. It's actually not too bad, because these jaws, even though the handles are pretty short, these jaws are pretty short. And when you're doing this kind of the pinch type, known as the insulated type, it actually worked pretty well. You have to put more pressure on than when you're using the one tooth that's kind of just punching in and folding it. And so they did smartly put the insulated, or the compression crimp, or I should say crimp cutouts, closer to the hinge pin, deeper down the jaw, so you don't, where the operation that needs more force, you're going to get more leverage against. So they actually have been intelligently made. And I probably talked way too much about them. But other than that, Dorman makes like just, household replacement parts. You find them at hardware stores and that type of stuff. So it's kind of funny to see their name on tools, and that they're Builder Series Professional. But to tell you the truth, this is kind of a niche product, and I do like it because it's just a basic wire stripper for common gauge wires up through 12. Actually, I think that's 12 gauge. Oh, they say soft wire only, of course. They don't want you cutting steel wire because these aren't designed for that. One thing they don't tell you is there's a difference. A 10 gauge solid core has the same diameter as a 12 gauge stranded, and this is looking kind of small there, so I don't know if that really will be for 12 gauge stranded. It looks like it may just be just right. I just couldn't dig up any 12 gauge cable to really tell. Everything else seems just fine. And of course, using these cutters, you don't actually strip the wires with these. These, you just make sure you get the wire nice and centered in the cutters, and then you just close and then open again. That creates a split, and then you pull it off once again with the serrated jaws. So they act as a nice little set of pliers. Anyway, I thought these were pretty cool for real compact or tight space work. Maybe if you're working on an aircraft or boats, a lot of crimp connectors used on boats, that these could certainly come in handy because they're just so compact, so you can get in a real tight area and just be able to get that crimp connector on. And so I thought they'd be an interesting addition to the tool collection. And you know, as far as squeezing them, we do get a little bit of flex there, so it's nice that they use a bit of extra steel. I always kind of do that little test because there are some tools where, I mean, you just squeeze them and you feel, and it's like you're squeezing on a spring. These definitely still feel pretty solid. And I guess worst case scenario, if you have any issues with this fastener, you can always replace it with a regular nut and bolt, and they'll just stick out a little bit more on one side. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.